I have a special system for organizing all my work ideas and plans. This system helps me successfully combine several projects at once, manage a large team of people, not forget anything, get everything done on time, and be happy and enjoy life while doing it. I also manage to make time for entertainment, friends, personal life, self-improvement, travel, and making things that I could once only dream of. Also, I waste time and procrastinate way less. Even though I'm quite a lazy person, on top of not being particularly organized or self-disciplined, this system really does help me get my life together a great deal. I'm talking about a system called Getting Things Done, or GTD for short. It's also the title of David Allen's book. The book itself is pretty outdated. It was written in 2001, back when we didn't have smartphones and task manager apps, but the general principles described in this book are still relevant today and will be always, as they're based on the principles that govern how our brain works. So I think I'd be way less productive, I'd fail to get as many things done, and would be less happy on the whole without this system. And it's not even that complicated. It can be used by virtually anybody. The first time I heard about GTD was when my mentor, Oscar Hartman, the multi-millionaire, shared that he had been using it for a long time. And I'm really thankful that he did. And today I'm going to spread the knowledge and share the principles of GTD with you too. Especially because my subscribers have been asking about it for a long time. So, my name's Greg Mustreader, let's go. The main principle that GTD is based on is the idea that you need to write down every idea and every task in a designated place, and then regularly organize the notes you've made in a specific way. The place where you write the notes could be either physical or electronic, according to your liking. In case of a physical GTD, one uses paper and a set of special folders. This is a system that is favored by GTD's author, David Allen himself. However, I think that this method would be extremely inconvenient for modern people, and that the electronic system is much more convenient and works much better. There are many different ways to use the digital system. People use apps like Todoist, Asana, Trello, OmniFocus, etc. I use Todoist. I tried Trello and Notion as well. They are both great, but I think that Todoist is the one that works best for me. It doesn't really matter whether you use a physical or an electronic system or which app you use. The most important part is not to keep it all in your head, which would cause you to strain to remember things and wonder if you've forgotten anything, but you should always file everything into your GTD system. It's not just filing, though. What happens to your notes after they've been written down or typed up is a no less important aspect of keeping a well-organized GTD. The place where you file your tasks, ideas, and plans is called an inbox. The way it's usually done is you input a minimum of a few new items that you have in mind into it every single day. The GTD system also requires you to spend some time every day, at least between 5 and 10 minutes, organizing your inbox. You also have to set aside some time every week to organize all your recent entries. On your screen, you can see the diagram of what's supposed to happen with all the information that you input. I'm now going to give you a quick compressed explanation of this diagram. Feel free to rewind and listen to it again if you feel like you need to. So, when you organize your inbox, you take each item from your notes one by one and ask yourself a few questions for each. The first question is there anything I need to do with this information? Is this a good note or is it useless? There are only two options here, yes or no. If the answer is no, you've got two options. The first one is, if the note is useless, then it goes straight to the bin. The second one is, if this is a useful bit of info, but which isn't relevant to you at the moment, then it goes into your notes folder or some other place where you keep your notes. This is the case for when you've answered no to the first question. If the answer is yes, there's something I have to do with this information, then you continue by asking yourself, is it something that I have to do? It could be sometimes the case that the task at hand does not require your personal attention, but is rather there for someone else. For example, your wife or your colleague, or if it's the case where you could technically do it yourself, but you may just as well hand it over to someone else. Delegate. Hand it over to a person whose time is worth less than yours. So it's best in this case to do the latter and to delegate the task. I'm going to make a separate video about delegation, which is an important skill in itself. So right, if the answer is this task isn't for me, you delegate it to the correct person by placing it into waiting for folder with a note saying whom you've delegated it to and what the deadline is for that, so that you don't manage to accidentally forget or lose anything. Finally, if the answer is yes, this is something I personally have to tend to, you ask yourself the next question, which is, when does it have to be done? If the task has a clear deadline, you transport it straight to your calendar. Unlike the normal diary-style entries, in the GTD system you place tasks under a specific date only when there is a hard specific deadline, a date by which you have to do something, and a day on which something happens. If the task has no specific deadline, then it doesn't go into your calendar. There are two options for what you could do with it next. If there is no clear deadline and this task or even dream is something that you want to achieve later down the line, so not in the next few days or weeks, then you put it into someday maybe folder. Say the task is something like go surfing in Bali. Right now Bali is in quarantine, plus you've got a ton of work to do, so for now you place this task into the someday maybe folder. The other option is for when the task must be completed in the near future. For example, in the next few days or a few weeks. In this case, you ask yourself one more question. Is this a task that can be completed in one step? Meaning, does it require a single action to be completed? For example, a task like watch Mustreader's video on GTD. This task consists of a single action. All you need to do is click on the link and watch the video. One-step tasks must either be done immediately while you're organizing your inbox, if they take less than 2 minutes to do, or put into the folder called Next Actions, from where you can pull it up at a later date, when you've got the time, the right context, and the energy to do it. If the task is something like master the GTD system, then it becomes a multiple-step task that cannot be done in a single action. In this case, you need to pull this task out of the inbox and create a new project in your GTD system, which you're going to call Mastering the GTD System. Then you determine the first single-step action that you need to take to start this project, and you note it down. For example, the first action can be something like watch Mustreader's video. Then you take this task and you put it into the Next Actions folder. When you split a project into one-step tasks, map them out and have the first one of these pending in your Next Actions folder, the probability of you completing the project goes up dramatically. Then, once you've finished the first project task, you map out the next single-step task and so on. At this point, you're probably a little confused about the whole thing. The system is actually quite simple, which isn't immediately obvious for first-time users, but it's once you get used to it and implement it into your life fully that you begin reaping the benefits to the fullest by not forgetting anything, getting everything done on time, getting all of your projects finished, and even achieving your long-term goals. But you have to implement the system, start using it to the fullest to achieve all that. The hardest thing about this system is setting it up correctly for yourself and making it become a habit. If you've decided to implement GTD into your life, first you need to write down a huge list of all the projects, plans, dreams, tasks, great ideas, and notes for the future, all the shopping lists and to-do lists that you need to get done, everything that you've got floating in your head right now, as well as on random scraps of paper in your diary or in your bucket list, a list of all the skills that you want to master, people that you want to meet, etc. This listing exercise that you need to get through in order to create your initial GTD inbox should take you no less than a day, maybe 10 hours of non-stop work. In the end, you should have at least several hundred or even 1,000 notes, which you can then sort according to the GTD system. This is the hardest and the longest step. Everything after this is a breeze. But it's essential that you dedicate a day to setting up your GTD, maybe 2 days. Either you take 2 consecutive days where you write down everything and sort all your notes by tasks and projects, or you take one of your weekend days off for 2 weeks in a row, which is also an option. The most important thing is not to get distracted for these 2 days and to fully concentrate on the task at hand. It's also important to fully implement this system into your day-to-day life. From the moment I first heard of GTD to the time when I finally started using it, there was a gap of a few years, and I regret that I didn't switch to it immediately. But you absolutely cannot implement it without designating these 2 full days to it. I won't be able to go into detail on GTD implementation and the correct way of setting it up and so on. It would take a few hours to show and tell you everything. I recommend you read David Allen's book, which has a detailed explanation of the whole thing. Maybe I'll make more videos on how I got GTD set up for myself. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested to see that. If I see a lot of those, I'll make a separate video on it. When any idea or a plan of any kind pops into my head, or when I arrange a meeting with someone, or when I set on completing a certain task, I immediately make a note of it in my todoist inbox. Usually I do this on my phone, but if I've got my laptop in front of me, then I use that, as I've got a cross-platform access to my GTD through all my devices. By the way, this is really important. I also spend between 5 and 10 minutes, usually in the evening, organizing all my inbox. I file everything into folders, I arrange them in order of priority, I mark some items in the calendar, some go into my notes, some other things are passed over to my team, delegated, etc. Once a week, on weekends, I dedicate half an hour to reviewing the system. Maybe while I'm in a taxi, I'll scroll through the list of ongoing projects, I'll see what I have to do in the next few days, I'll see if I'm missing anything, for example, see if I'm getting enough rest, or if I'm completing my plans for the year and so forth. On the app, except for the folders that I talked about earlier, such as next actions, projects, waiting for, someday maybe, etc., except for these, in your GTD, it's possible, and it's recommended, that you divide your tasks by context. For example, some things require you to be at your computer, while others require you to be at the office. Others must be done while you're on a shopping trip or while you're on a trip somewhere. Others when you have spare time, spare 15 minutes in between things, and so on. So context sorting is also an important feature of GTD. You can do it in various apps, and you can also sort your tasks by priority, also in task manager apps. When I've got time for work or self-development, or when I've simply got a few spare minutes during the day, I use them to go on my Todoist app. Say, for example, I showed up to a meeting earlier than the other person, and I've got half an hour till they arrive. I open the Todoist app and I check what needs doing in the near future, in the next actions section, as well as in the calendar. Then, based on the context and based on the priority, I select a task and I start doing it. And I don't waste any time thinking, am I doing the best thing I could be doing right now? Have I forgotten anything? What should I do now? I don't think about those questions. I've also got my tasks conveniently sorted by cities. When I go to London, I've got a list of places, plans, walk ideas, meeting arrangements, interviews, all of that for when I'm there, all tagged London on my Todoist. So when I select this tag, all the relevant tasks immediately pop up on my screen so that I don't forget anything. I've got the same tag set up for, say, California. Once the pandemic's over, I'm going over there to film some content. I've got a lot of ideas and tasks planned, so I've got holiday plans too, and all of it I can just open with one click. I click the label California and it's all there. And nothing gets lost or forgotten. So once you get the same system going, you're going to love it as much as I do, I guarantee you. Tell me in the comments if you've got any problems with your productivity. I'll try to answer all of the comments and give you some recommendations if I can. I'm Greg Mustreader, and there's going to be more productivity content. Stay tuned and support me on Patreon. The link is in the description. See you.